Incontinence, so leaking wheeze, poos, or the inability to hold in a fart. Prolapse, constant sore lower back. Pain with sex or penetration. The inability to fully release your wheeze or feel like you've fully gone to the toilet. Pain, pelvic pain. All of these things can point to something to do with this, the pelvic floor. When it comes to incontinence, there are two types: stress incontinence and urge incontinence. You may have heard of the key in the door syndrome. Literally, you get to the door, that key goes in, brain sends a signal, I've got to go to the toilet straight away. The other one is stress incontinence, and that's the one that we tend to deal with when it comes to exercise. Or it may be when we sneeze, cough, we have that feeling we have to cross our legs in case we leak. These are all incredibly common, however, we don't have to put up with these things. Why do we experience incontinence? It's got something to do with this powerhouse here, the pelvic floor, and in fact the whole core system. Imagine that this balloon is my core. My diaphragm sits up here, and that's my breathing muscle. My pelvic floor sits down below, and it's responsible for keeping everything up inside of us. It's also responsible for the control of urine and feces, so the releasing of them. It's also responsible for sexual function as well, and it's generally the most underrated muscle inside of our body, because that's exactly what it is. It's a muscle. It requires contraction and relaxation at certain times. And what happens ideally in our system when we breathe in and out, the diaphragm will lift on an exhale as well as the pelvic floor. And then when we inhale, they tend to descend downwards. When we sneeze, lift, jump, get a fright, and we experience that leaking of urine. This is why our pelvic floor sits here, diaphragm. We generate a lot of pressure or a lot of air with that fright or that sneeze. Let's pretend I'm going to go sneeze. Watch the pelvic floor. Choo! Watch down here. Breathing in. Choo! A lot of the pressure then descends down onto the pelvic floor. And so if our pelvic floor is a little bit weaker, then we may experience some of that leaking, whether that be urine or other. There are two types of pelvic floors. One is called a hypertonic pelvic floor, and that's where the muscle is in a more contracted type state, a bit more tense or tight. The second is a hypotonic pelvic floor, where the pelvic floor is a little bit more relaxed and there's not it struggles a little bit to generate that tension that's required. Each requires a different intervention when it comes to sorting out what's going on. Hence why I always say go and seek the professional services of a pelvic floor physiotherapist. The amount of times I've said that is insane. More often than not, women with childbirth experience hypotonic pelvic floor, where things are a little bit more relaxed, and that generating of the tension of the pelvic floor is a little bit trickier. What happens with the hypotonic pelvic floor is that we add load, such as a jump or a lift or a cough or a sneeze or whatever it is. We can't generate that tension that's actually required, and therefore we leak. With a hypertonic pelvic floor, we are in a constant state of contraction, and we need that relaxation part, because that's how a muscle works. A muscle will become extremely fatigued if it's in a constant state of contraction, but also we need that muscle to contract. I'm going to talk about prolapse briefly, because prolapse is certainly related to a weakened pelvic floor. If we have a hypotonic pelvic floor, it means that our organs can start to descend, because that muscle is not contracting or strong enough to keep those muscles up, to keep those organs up inside, sorry. So that's when we may start to see the descend of either the bladder, the vaginal vault, the uterus, or the rectum. The pelvic floor can allow those muscles, I say it again, can allow those pelvic organs to stay up in their place. It's not just go and do your Kegels. It's actually about being aware of your posture, your breathing patterns, your contraction of your floors, and your contraction of your core as well. The whole package is what can help you progress with your exercise. What can I do if I'm experiencing incontinence? So whether that's the wheeze, the poos, or the farts, or I'm experiencing that heavy bulging sensation, that kind of pushing down, or sometimes feels heavy and discomfort down below. What can I do about it? The first thing is go and see your doctor. And if they say this is part of motherhood, this is what it is to be a woman, you lay a complaint and you go elsewhere, because you do not have to put up with these issues. They are incredibly common. So many women experience them, but you don't have to put up with them. Once you've seen a doctor that you feel comfortable with, they can send you for a referral. Depending on where you live, you can get a free referral to see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Or if you want to pay, you don't have to have that doctor's referral to go and see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. In the meantime, between seeing those people, those professionals, maybe just dial it back with the higher impact, higher intensity type exercises. Tune into when you feel that leaking or that heaviness. Is it when you lift? Is it when you sneeze or cough? Is it when you jump? When do you experience those symptoms? Make a note of them so that you have stuff to take to you at your appointment. And the other thing you can do exercise-wise is anticipate the lift or the sneeze or the cough by squeezing and lifting your vagina, like doing a Kegel, before you do that movement pattern. So I'm about to pick up a small child that's fallen onto the ground, and before I lift out of that squat, I would be gently squeezing and lifting my vagina before I then start to come out of that squat to protect my pelvic floor. And I would exhale as well as when I'm coming out. However, I need to state that if you have a hypertonic pelvic floor, that strategy may not suit you. Hence why I always say go and see a pelvic floor physiotherapist, because what I prescribe may not be best for that. And I don't know if you have a hypotonic pelvic floor or a hypertonic pelvic floor without doing an examination, and that's out of my scope of practice. You can get into the exercises that you want to get into. It's all about tapping into the resources, the professionals, learning to manage the whole core system, and really tuning into our bodies to best benefit us. We don't have to put up with it. Very, very common, but totally something that we can do about it. Prolapse and incontinence can be managed with the right interventions at the right time. If we act now, we can prevent the snowball effect further on down as we age. Thank you for watching these. I hope they've been beneficial. If you think someone else would benefit or enjoy them, please do share. The more we share, the more we break down those barriers around with having conversations around it being shameful or embarrassing. And the more that we can then empower not only ourselves, but everyone around us. So thank you very much for watching.